Okay, grade ones. So we have a new chapter book to read, and it is called Magic Treehouse. So it's a Magic Treehouse book, and there are a lot of different Magic Treehouse books at our school library and the Stettler Public Library. This one is called Ghost Town at Sundown, so it's kind of like a Wild West story, so kind of like cowboys and horses and deserts and all that kind of stuff. Now, Magic Treehouse books always have the same two characters, Jack and Annie. They're brother and sister. And in the first book, which I can't find, they discover this magic tree house, okay? And there's this lady that they meet there called Morgan Le Fay, and she's kind of magic. And what she does is she makes the tree house be able to transport back in time. So when Jack and Annie go into this tree house, they talk to Morgan Le Fay, who will tell them, I need you to go to the Wild West, and I need you to save this person or solve this riddle. And each book, they transport somewhere back in time. They have to save somebody, and then they need to get back to the magic tree house and transport back to real life again. So we're going to read the first two chapters of this book. So it is called Ghost Town at Sundown. And remember, a chapter book, it just has words, so we have to create the movie in our head, right? We have to think about the pictures and things like that, and think, okay, what would this look like? So here we go. I'm excited. I read these books a lot when I was in elementary school, so I'm excited to share this with you. There are 10 chapters. We're going to read chapter 1 and 2. Chapter 1 is called How Wild. Jack and Annie were sitting on the porch of their house. Annie was gazing down the street at Frog Creek Woods. Jack was reading a book. I have a feeling we should check the woods again, said Annie. Why, said Jack without looking up. A rabbit's hopping by, said Annie. So we've seen rabbits before. Not like this one, said Annie. What do you mean? Jack stood up and looked at her. He saw a rabbit with very long legs hopping down their street. Soon the rabbit left the sidewalk and headed into the woods. It's a sign, said Annie. A sign of what? Said Jack. That Morgan's back, said Annie. She jumped off the porch. Come on. But what about dinner? Jack said. Dad said it would be ready soon. Don't worry, said Annie. You know when we leave in the treehouse, time stops. So that's an important thing to know. They go to the treehouse, they transport back in time, and time in real life just freezes. She ran across the yard. Jack pulled on his backpack. Back in 10 minutes, he called through the screen door. Then he followed Annie. They hurried down their street and into the Frog Creek Woods. The sun was setting high above the trees. There he is, said Annie. The rabbit was standing in a ray of sunlight. When he saw them, he took off. Jack and Annie followed the rabbit until he vanished behind the tallest tree. I told you, see, said Annie, panting. She pointed up at the tree. Morgan Le Fay was waiting for them in the magic tree house, high in the branches. Jack and Annie waved back to her. As always, Jack was very happy to see the enchantress librarian again. Come on up, she said. Annie and Jack started up the rope ladder. They climbed up to the treehouse. We followed a strange rabbit here, said Annie. Is he your friend? Perhaps, said Morgan. She smiled mysteriously. I've many odd friends. Including us, said Annie. Morgan laughed. That's right. How are you? Said Jack. I'm having problems with Merlin, said the enchantress, which leaves me little time to do my real work. But soon you will both become master librarians, and that will be a big help to me. Jack smiled. He was going to be a master librarian who traveled through time and space. It was almost too good to believe. Are you ready to solve another riddle? Asked Morgan. Yes, said Jack and Annie together. Good, said Morgan. First, you will need this for research. She pulled a book from her robe and handed it to Jack. It was the book that would help them on their journey. The title of the book was Days of the Wild West. On the cover was a picture of a western town on a prairie. Oh, wow, said Annie, the Wild West. Jack took a deep breath. Just how wild, he wondered. Morgan reached into the fold of her robe again and pulled out a scroll. She handed it to Annie. Read this when the treehouse lands, she said. Is it the riddle? Asked Jack. Yes. Then you will only have 2 more to solve. Are you ready to go? Jack and Annie nodded. Annie pointed to the picture on the cover of the Wild West book. I wish we could go there, she said. The wind started to blow. Goodbye, said Morgan. Good luck. The treehouse started to spin. Jack squeezed his eyes shut. The treehouse spun faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. Jack opened his eyes. Morgan Le Fay was gone. A fly buzzed around his head. Chapter 2, Rattlesnake Flats. The air was hot and dry. Jack and Annie peeked outside. The treehouse had landed in a lone tree on a prairie. The sun was low in the sky. Right in front of them was the town from the cover of the book. In real life, it looked empty and spooky. To one side of the town, there was a patch of ground with several tombstones. That's creepy, said Annie. Yeah, said Jack. He took a deep breath. What does our riddle say? Annie held up the ancient scroll. She unrolled it, and then they read it together. There is a picture on this page, grade 1. It's in black and white, but I will show you. So it's an old Wild West town. You can see tombstones in the background, and you can also see the magic tree house there. And then we have some kind of like Wild Westy looking houses or buildings. All right, so here's the riddle that they have to read. Out of the blue, my lonely voice calls out to you. Who am I? Am I? Jack pushed his glasses into place, and he read the riddle again to himself. There must be a mistake, he said. Am I is written twice. Well, I don't hear any voices now, Annie said as she looked out the window. There were no human sounds at all, only the buzzing of flies and the whistling of the dry wind. Let's look at the book, Jack said. He opened the book. The pages were yellow with age. He found a picture of the town, and he read the words beneath it out loud. In the 1870s, Rattlesnake Flats was a rest stop for the stagecoach that carried passengers from Santa Fe, New Mexico to Fort Worth, Texas. Then the creek dried up. Everybody left. By 1888, it was a ghost town. Wow, a ghost town, said Annie, her eyes wide. Let's take a quick look around, said Jack, so we can leave before dark. Right, said Annie, let's hurry. She started down the rope ladder. Jack put the old book in his pack. Then he followed Annie down the ladder. They stood by the tree and looked about. Tumbleweeds blew across the dry ground. Suddenly, something jumped past them. Yikes, they both said. But it was just a rabbit, a lone, long-legged rabbit hopping past them. Hey, that's just like the rabbit we saw at home, said Jack. Yeah, that rabbit must have been a sign of things to come, said Annie. The rabbit hopped across the prairie and out of sight. I better take notes, said Jack. He reached into his backpack and he took out his notebook and pencil. He wrote, rabbit with long legs. What's that sound, said Annie. What sound, said Jack. That rattling sound, said Annie. What do you think it is? I think it's a rattlesnake. Jack looked up. What? He said. There! Annie pointed to a rattlesnake. It was about 100 feet away. It was coiled up and rattling. Jack took one look at the snake and ran. Annie ran too. They ran past the graveyard and right into the ghost town. I guess this is why this town is called Rattlesnake Flats, said Annie when they stopped. Jack looked around. The town was hardly big enough to call a town. There was one unpaved street and a few old buildings. It was quiet. Too quiet. Look, a store, said Annie. She pointed at the building. The faded sign said General Store. Let's look inside. Maybe the answer to the riddle is in there. Jack and Annie stepped onto the porch. The wooden boards creaked loudly. The door had fallen off its hinges. They peeked inside. The air was thick with dust. Spiderwebs hung from the ceiling. Maybe we shouldn't go in, said Jack. But what if the answer's here, said Annie. Let's just take a quick look. Jack took a deep breath. Okay. He and Annie tiptoed into the store. Look, said Annie. She picked up a pair of rusty spurs. Spurs you would use when you're riding a horse. Careful, said Jack. He poked at the other stuff in the store. An old feed sack, a rusted tin cup, a faded calendar dated 1878. Oh, wow, said Annie. She held up 2 cowboy hats. She put one on and handed the other to Jack. For you. It's too dusty, said Jack. Just blow on it, said Annie. Jack blew on his hat and a cloud of dust rose. Jack sneezed. Just try it on, said Annie. Jack put on the hat. It nearly covered his eyes. Boots, said Annie. She pointed to a row of cowboy boots on the shelf. There are even some small ones, like our sizes. Here's a pair for you. She handed the boots to Jack. They're not ours, he said. I know, but just try them on, said Annie. Jack turned his boots upside down and shook them as hard as he could. What are you doing? Annie asked, pulling on another pair of boots. Checking for scorpions, said Jack. Jack, Annie laughed. Try them on. Jack sighed. He pulled off his sneakers and he pushed his feet into the boots. He pushed and pushed. The boots were really stiff. Finally, he got his feet inside, and then he tried to walk. Ow, he said. Forget it. He started to pull off the boots. What's that? Annie said. Jack froze. Piano music, said Annie. Maybe it's the voice in the riddle. Come on. Jack threw his sneakers into his backpack and hobbled after Annie. And there's another black and white picture of the kids trying on their cowboy boots and hats. Chapter 3 is called The Player Piano, and we are going to stop here. I'm already so curious about this riddle. Oh my gosh, I don't know what the voice could be. For writing today, I want you to write about if you had a magic treehouse, where would you travel to? You could travel to somewhere in the past. You could travel to anywhere like on the planet. You could, I don't know where you want to travel to, Disneyland, or if you want to travel back to see the dinosaurs. Like, where do you want to travel? So writing today, if you had a magic treehouse, where would you travel? We'll read the other chapters in a couple days. I'm already super curious about this book. I hope you are too. I'm looking forward to seeing where you would travel. I'll talk to you soon.